Hello, superhumans. I'm Sally, and this is Miracles of Consciousness Radio. I'm a QHHT practitioner who studied under Dolores Cannon, as well as a multidimensional healer. And RJ Spina recently put up a video talking about how past lives affect our current reality. And of course, I could not let this one slide by without doing a reaction to it because we actually have places where we agree, and believe it or not, we disagree. And the reason I disagree on some of it, which you'll find out toward the end, is that working with several of our clients over the past decade and working and networking with many practitioners around the world, there is a common thread that we can begin to see that emerges with what people are telling us, what they're seeing. Now, that doesn't mean that RJ is wrong. He's absolutely right for him. And at the end, I'm going to give you a technique that you can try at home so you can begin to develop the skills to decide what is right for you. And remember, there is no right or wrong. There's just you and your experience and how you hone in on it. So for now, let's get started. And maybe at the end, everything I just cryptically said will actually make sense. Now, the question the presenter is asking is, how did you get to past lives? What are your views on past lives? And I'm going to be giving my reaction and explain why I think he's right and where I think he might be. It might be right for him, but maybe not right for you. Let's just leave it at that. Okay, here we go.
There was a couple of things going on there. One, I wanted to hone my skills and abilities. So for me, this is way back, this is 30 years ago now at this point, right? So I wanted to get better at my ability to do these things, to access these things. And one of the first things I started doing was giving past life readings to people. Once more of these abilities and talents came online, I stopped because I realized they were making more identifications. They were creating more attachments. So I'm like, well, my goal is liberation. And so if I'm telling people about their past lives and they're identifying with that, I'm actually not helping them. So I'm just going to stop.
All right. And we're going to stop right there because this is actually a perfect point that he makes. And I find this a lot even when I'm doing the past life reading. So some people can't afford to do the full scale QHHT because it can get quite expensive. I get that. So we do past life readings as well. Now, what happens is when we, of course, let's just admit at this, past lives are an awful lot of fun to kind of explore. But what happens is we begin to tend to identify with who we were versus who we are. So you get caught up in the romanticized version that I might have been Abigail Adams, just for example. Or in his case, he talks about becoming or being Francis Bacon. So even though we are looking at the past lives and it is quite entertaining, those past lives, those events actually happen to shape what events that we can navigate through in this particular lifetime. So I understand what he's saying because people do this with me as well, whether they're doing a full-blown QHHT session or we're just doing a past life reading. And they get so caught up in the narrative of who they were versus identifying why that information has streamed forward into this life experience. And that's important. So the first thing that I would ask as a QHHT practitioner or even doing this reading is, one, is this a blueprint energy or is it two, an imprint energy? Imprint means they take a page out of somebody else's book and they place it into their own life experience book to help them navigate through something that they are going to go through in this particular lifetime. Now, if you are a soul that has incarnated and you have incarnated with certain goals in mind, and you have nothing in your past lives to help you navigate through that, that's where the imprint becomes important. Because just like a computer, You need programming. You need something to intuit to in order to get through a situation that your soul is trying to learn and evolve from. So, with that said, the blueprint is what your soul actually experienced. And it can feel exactly the same. This is why when we are doing past life regressions or past life readings, it is critical to ask that question. Is this a blueprint or is this an imprint? So for those of you going out there for a QHHT session, make sure that you tell your practitioner to ask, is it a blueprint or is it an imprint? Now, sometimes these energies can actually stream through and just stream through for no other reason. So it's just like a computer. Sometimes your computer needs to be defragged. Sometimes your multidimensional self also needs to be defragged. Sometimes this energy just comes through. I don't know why. We haven't really talked about it or even really identified that. In my practice, I don't know if others, but I don't know about that. And it just gets hung up. And the next question becomes, is this important? Is there a lesson that needs to be learned? 90% of the time, the soul is ready to get rid of it. It's just junk that just came through. All right. So if there's no use for it, is it time to clear it? And the soul or the higher self will say, yes, it's time to clear it. So we clear it. And actually, you can clear it too on your own. You don't need me. You just need to know how to do it. Or you don't need anybody else. You can do this. So we'll talk about that at the end. So when he's saying that people became too closely identified with their past person or persons, then they're not taking what they learned from those past experiences, applying it to their life lessons today to grow themselves in the I am moment and going forward. When the past lives are hung up and they are still affecting our past life today, sometimes the soul or the higher self has to make a conscious connection to that experience to understand something that they are either currently going through, something that they've already been through, or something that is still needed to go through. So then that question becomes, is this past life energy, is it needed? And occasionally we'll get, yes, it is needed. And why is it still needed? Well, because the person has not recognized this thing that is going on within them, and they need to recognize what this is and why it's happening so they can then let it go. So remember, when you are going through the healing process, like I've always said, it is between resistance and non-resistance, and past life energies can be resistance, and it can slow you down and bog you up. So let's go on. So I agree with RJ here, but he's got a lot more to say. So let's roll him.
So now the exploration, that when we talk personally about me exploring, one, it was to sharpen my skills, and two, as a kid, I just had this feeling about myself. And I even used to say names over and over again as a mantra. I used to, and I don't remember, believe it or not, I don't remember if I put it in the book. I used to say Francis Bacon over and over and over again. Francis Bacon, Francis Bacon, Francis Bacon. And then I used to say Plato, 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 Plato. And everyone's like, what the hell are you saying that for? I'm like, I don't know. And now I realize I was trying to wake myself up. I was literally
So that's also important too. And I'll just say that real quick here. If you have a name that's coming forward, or you feel drawn to a place or a person, that could actually be just like RJ, your soul's trying to wake you up too. So what did this person have to do with anything that you might be going through? That's something to look at. And then, is this information needed? So that draw that you have, the draw to a person, the draw to a place, it is coming from your blueprint, your blueprint or your imprint energetic field. And it's there to remind you of something so your soul can grow.
For me personally, for me to continue my work as best I can, I think I required some kind of confirmation and validation because I feel very different and my understandings are very different and I have, strange things I can do. It's like, my feeling is that I'm that. So I need to understand. I mean, do I feel this way for a reason? Is it just my imagination? So I wanted confirmation for myself, and that confirmation kind of freed me up, Tim, to continue my work as RJ. So it's really those two things. I always had that feeling. I wanted to confirm or make sure that no, that's not true. So I wanted that confirmation, and at the same time, I just wanted to keep getting better and better and better, so I could serve better and better and better. So that had a lot to do with the exploration of past lives.
It is, even though you're helping people go as deep as they can at whatever level they're starting from. Do things like past lives, do you see them as just getting in the way? Do you still just kind of put them to one side when people ask you about them?
There's something deeply wrong with the way we put tasks on a to-do list, and here's why.
Only thing I would say is that if our evolution seemingly, if seemingly we're stuck and we need something, it's like training wheels, right? Do we always want to drive around? Well, no, but are they helpful? They sure are. They're absolutely, I had training. I mean, they're helpful, right? Okay. So I think I kind of view it as that way. I've worked with thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And every now and then, if I pick up that some of their sticking point has to do with a past life thing that they have not let go, I will bring it up. I'll say, hey, just so you know, blah, 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 blah. This is where this comes from. And you see the relief and the release. So it can be helpful, but to start to focus, if it becomes the focus, then you're not really being who you are right now. Right. And this is a trap. And Rich and I used to talk about that. I said, we can't focus on your past lives, Rich, and my past lives. What we have to focus on is right now, who we are right now. We can draw upon the freedom of knowing that, yes, this is what we do when we're here. We're able to do these things. We are teachers of humanity, et cetera, et cetera. But if that becomes the focus, you're going to miss everything, the all-encompassing beauty of right now. So it's helpful. They're training wheels. It's maybe the best way to look at it.
That's fine. Training wheels is good. Makes complete sense. Just a quick one. Do you think you'll be back again?
Without question. Yeah, without question. It's so, I mean, I've already deeply experienced from a linear perspective, because it's all happening now, which is, I know the mind's like, what? But it is. Yeah. So I have deeply explored my next, from a linear perspective, what would be my next incarnation. And yeah, I will be back, and it's, I'll even give some of it away. So it's around 2154. I am at that point, I am around 30 years old, and I'm living in the place that we used to know as Chicago. And I won't go any further than that.
All right. Now, this is really important because we've talked about this in our QHHT sessions with several people. And I've actually networked with other practitioners who are finding the same answers. When RJ, and I think Brian Weiss also did a book. It's like Past Life, Future Lives. So, yes, he is correct. We have common agreement, all of us, that it is much like a book, and the life that you are living currently is a particular chapter, and the life you had before is another chapter. And basically, you're this one unit, this book. And bringing forward this information from past lives is there. Either it's stuck and it just came through and there's no use for it, which we can go ahead and clear easily, or there's a reason it's there. It's to remind you of something, to remind you of an experience that you are going to have or already had, and find out if it's still needed. If it's still needed, then the soul will kind of go through an explanation of why it's needed. That's when the person has that aha moment, and then they're able to process it and then let it go at that time. Now, when he is talking about the future lives, and he has gone deep within himself, probably through some type of meditation, to look at his future life, and he sees, holy cow, I'm going to be living in an area where Chicago used to be. Don't let that panic you, because that is what his soul, his higher self, is choosing for himself. So it is literally like a multi-universe. So even though his soul is going on a certain thread in time, does not mean that your soul choosing to live in the quote same era, same year, that Chicago might actually be there. Maybe you're living in Chicago and Chicago has turned into a beautiful city, because everybody has a choice at every single moment. And when he's talking about, and he's going to come to this, he's going to be talking about, in some regards, everything's already written. And so everything that has and will be all came with the Big Bang. It all came into existence at once. All your past, your nows, and your futures is all existing at the same time. That is such a confusing thing. And the most questions I get is, how do I reconcile that? And it is difficult when we live in a linear experience. But when we're looking at people who've had near-death experiences and those people who have had the deep theta experiences, we look for the common thread, the common information that's coming through everyone, because these people don't know each other. They don't have any contact with each other. So we tend to, especially before internet, Dolores Cannon was much more able to say, okay, this person here and this person over on the other side of the earth, they're telling me the same story, but they have no contact with each other. It's a little bit more hard now that everybody's in contact with each other through the internet. But we do have a lot of documented experiences that especially Dolores has done, and near-death experiences have done prior to the internet especially. That yes, it is, everything has sort of happened at once. However, there is a caveat, and this is where RJ and I are going to go our separate ways on this thinking. And so it's like before we come in, we put in potentialities into our ingredients and what we're going to experience in this lifetime. And sometimes we always have free will, but when we hit those points in time, when we've added this to the mix, we can choose to go through the experience, or we can make a different decision and create a new timeline that will create something else. Sometimes these points that we create prior to coming in, sometimes they will stay with us in the new timeline, or sometimes they'll just fade away because they are no longer needed. And so there is more free will than what he will express here. And let me allow his video to go a little bit longer here, and then I'll wrap it up, and then I'll give you a tip.
That's a really interesting point of view from a human perspective, linear perspective. That's really interesting. I've never thought about looking at that. Never thought about that.
Yeah, because Tim, we can't. I mean, just to it has to already be there for us to tap into.
Yes.
So that means it's already occurring. And if we went further, we would actually realize the whole thing has already occurred.
Absolutely. Okay. So yeah, absolutely, mind blown. But does that not also bring in an aspect? I think it might well be in your book. I haven't gone that far into it, but I saw something about puppeteer. Does that mean, was that referencing to free will or the perception of free will? Because if everything's already happened, where does that put free will?
Oh, I just did a book signing a couple of days ago, and the first question someone asked, like, RJ, I got to talk to you about free will. Okay, so this is similar to the answer I gave this gentleman. Okay. So if we really dove deeply, and I have, if we really dove deeply, we would realize that this first moment of creation occurs. And it really has to do with beings becoming aware of themselves, and they begin creating. It's really what that is. Okay. After that moment, everything is already set into motion. There actually is no free will after that. Okay. Because it's now everything is a chain reaction. So it's not really, and I'll add to that. So it's not really free will. Now, from a human perspective, okay, so remember, we're a projection of our higher self, right?
Yeah.
So we are a piece of our higher self. This is the higher self evolving itself. We're like the drone or the tentacle of the octopus that's doing the learning on the behalf, because the higher self can't come all the way down here. Okay, so if we start to realize that the past, present, and future have all occurred, and what we're doing is moving I'll use a book. Let's go to analogy. It's better, right? Okay. We got a book, right? We open it up, page 77, right? Okay. And I look at the first sentence, right? Okay. In this moment, we don't know anything about the preceding 77 pages, and we don't know anything about the next 100 pages, right? Okay. Now, we only know and can only experience where our attention is right now. It's on the first sentence of page 77. But yet, the book is already written. It's already complete. Now, for us to understand ourselves as the limitless immortal creator, we have to understand all the minutiae, all the tiny bits and pieces of the first part of the book, this part of the book, and the end part of the book. And the only way to do that is to put your attention on every single word of every single sentence. Otherwise, you don't get the full impact of the book. But the book's already written. So we are moving our attention, which is energy. We're moving our attention throughout the whole thing. And the more that we move our attention through this whole thing, the more that we get out of the experience. But make no mistake about it, all of it has already occurred. Humanity is a raging success. The free will experiment is a raging success. We only just have our attention on one sentence in one paragraph on one page of an enormous book that has already been written.
Okay, so, and that may ring true with you, and that's fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that ringing true for you. But I will say, with the clients that I worked with and the ones that I network with my other QHHT practitioners, we are finding that the book can be changed. And the book can be changed that he's talking about, if we're going to use that metaphor. And I love that metaphor. I think it's great. It can be changed. We can erase, we can add, and the free will is more in place than what his perspective is. His perspective is more set. We've had the free will, then everything happened, the Big Bang, whatever, and everything's set into stone. And now you're just paying attention to one sentence on one page in a chapter book. If that's the case, then, how do you choose? Where's the free will of choosing, the fork in the road, or what you're going to do? He's saying it's already preset for you or predestined for you. I guess that could happen, because you know what? I don't think any of us really know for sure, but I can say, only from the perspective of my clients who are coming through with the same thread of information, people who don't know each other are describing it slightly different. Now, here's the thing. Here is the beautiful part. If you choose it to be so, the fact that you think it and feel it, you can create RJ Spina's, you can copy that into your own experience. That can be your experience. That's the beautiful thing about what quantum physics talks about, the multiverse, because in the multiverse, you can choose one destination and go forward for that, but maybe you change your mind. And what that does is split the timeline. And so as you are creating a different timeline, then the old timelines will begin to fade away. And they have found that in science. So I guess my limited understanding of quantum physics and the multiverse sort of marries really, really well with what we're being told by my QHHT clients and those of my other practitioners that I network with. We're sort of all kind of have the agreement that the soul, your higher self, can create whatever reality it wants, wherever you place your attention and intention on is what you will create. And yes, you do have the book and you do have certain things that you want to accomplish within your own chapters, but that doesn't mean it's so set in stone that it can't be changed. Perhaps you decide to learn something different. You have the ability within your own soul's path to change your destiny at any time. You are never, ever stuck. It's almost like, and I was actually talking with another friend of mine, and we were talking about this very subject. I said, the universe is very user-friendly. So yeah, you can stay stuck on a particular timeline and think that you're in this book and everything's predestined. But what happens is if you think, and this is where he sort of gets, in my mind, and I may be wrong, so leave a comment in the description box below. In my mind, I'm sort of hearing you have this free will, but then everything's already predestined. And that means everything that's in your destiny cannot be changed because it's already done. To me, if I'm hearing that for the first time, and as the person I was actually talking to, that sort of felt like, golly, I can't change anything. So, for example, there's a particular, we work with people who are ill and they have a particular diagnosis. And, they believe that their mind can heal themselves. They're big Bruce Lipton fans and believe in the epigenetics and that the mind, and RJ healed himself too, right? So we believe all of that. But what happens if you stay stuck in the identification of the illness, the identification of a failure? Well, my book is written, and up until now, I failed at everything. And I'm trying to have free will, but every time I move forward in my free will that I think is my free will, I keep coming up and I'm still losing. I'm still not getting the life I want. Well, why? And all you begin to hear is, well, it's already predestined. I'm just going to have to ride out the storm and then I'm going to croak. So I guess that's why, as from my point of view, from the things that I've witnessed, that I hold that much of what he says, I agree with like 95% of what he's saying. But I think where RJ and I go our separate ways is that, yes, there is a destiny, but I'm saying it's changeable, that you can erase that page and put in a new chapter in your book. You have the ability to edit your book. That's it. That's it. You have the ability to edit your book. You can create a new timeline. And remember, this is so important. If you believe in people doing quote prophecies and that the timelines are going to be this and there's going to be this destruction or that thing, that does not mean, like I said earlier, that your soul will experience that. Because your soul, because it's a user-friendly universe, you can create whatever timeline you want for you. So maybe in this timeline, you and RJ are going along and swimming and everything's fine. But his soul wants to experience a world in which Chicago's now gone and it's a different environment. But maybe your soul wants to experience Chicago. I'm just using that as an example. I'm not picking on Chicago. But just as an example, it might be this beautiful, bright, shining city that people gravitate to. It's up to what your soul wants to experience. And also remember, it's like he says, this is so important. It is being in the I am. So recognize what it is you're feeding your subconscious mind or your higher self. Because whatever it is you are feeding it, whatever narrative you are giving it, is what your universe is feeding back to you. And this is what quantum physics has taught us, that everything we think about and feel, when we marry those two together, when we are sending that information out, the universe will reflect it back to you. Nothing is so set in stone that it's unedible. That is where I'm going to go with it. Now, here's your free tip. When you are in a relaxed state, ask whatever question you have, but make sure that the question you are asking is very short and sweet. It is a yes or no question. Don't make it meandering, this, that, or the other. It is yes or no. Make it short and sweet and to the point. Now, I'm going to give you an example, and the only reason I give you this example, because it came up, and we've talked about it on my alternate channel, is just for an example, and this, please don't let this trigger you. This is just an example. The question that people were asking, quote, psychics, is who will be the next president of the United States? And so this question was posed back in 2016. And this has been on my desk, and I've not talked about it, but just to give you an example. And and then in 2020, it was asked again. And so in 2020, they said, yeah, Trump will be the winner of the presidential election. But if you want to know who's going to, quote, win the election, the question you need to ask yourself is who's not going to win or who's going to win. The question is, who is the sitting president in this particular time? And then listen to the answer. It's how you ask the question is what is important. So if you want to know something, be very careful in how you ask it. If you have trouble, you can reach out to me or somebody like me who's trained in understanding, like QHHT. We understand the language of the subconscious. Just make sure you're asking the question in a way that it can't be interpreted any other way, if that makes sense. So ask the question. Remember, the subconscious mind will answer you in the first 7 to 8 seconds. If it goes beyond that, it's your conscious mind. And you're also placing your confirmational biases on top of that, or you're laying in your fears. If you are coming from a place of fear, if you are in an energy of fear, you're not going to get any right answers. You have to be in a place of what we call non-resistance or neutral. That's why you need to be in a state of relaxation, because fear will not allow you to relax. So you just have to disengage from the outcome of the answer, not have a vested interest in the answer. Just ask the question and allow the question to be answered through the subconscious mind. And why that's important is because that technique will help you navigate through life's problems. Because we're all here to learn. There's always going to be something else next that's going to present itself. It's not about the difficulties of life. It's about how you navigate through that experience. And that's why you have past life energies, because it's building how to navigate and understand from a soul perspective that what is needed is to get into a place of non-resistance so you become one with your God source energy and allow your soul to grow. Now, I hope all that makes sense. If not, send me a message or leave a comment. Please like and share, because it does help the algorithms, help other people who are interested in this subject. And please stay tuned for future videos, because I hope to give you more tips in the future so you can get as much free stuff from me as you can to help you ignite the superhuman in you. Take care.